Grace and peace to you. Welcome to Morning Watch. I'm Rob, one of the pastors here at White Plains. Glad to have you with us this morning. Happy Wednesday, Owl. This is where we gather for a song and a thought for the day. So glad you're with us whenever you're watching. Thanks for being here. Good morning, Shana. Good morning, Terry. And good morning to you whenever you're tuning in. Thanks for being here. Good morning, Floretta. Well, let's begin our time together by going to God in prayer. Good morning, Faye. Meet me, O Christ, in this stillness of morning, and move me, O Spirit, to quiet my heart. Mend me, O Father, from yesterday's harms. From the discords of yesterday, resurrect my peace. From the discouragement of yesterday, resurrect my hope. From the weariness of yesterday, resurrect my strength. And from the doubts of yesterday, resurrect my faith. From the wounds of yesterday, resurrect my love. And let me enter this new day, aware of my need and awake to your grace, O Lord. Amen and amen. All right. Morning, Robin. So I've mentioned that I located a cloud folder of old songs, old youth group songs that had many of which are the same songs I've been doing for 30 years, but also some that I hadn't done in a long time and had kind of forgotten about. So I've been kind of going back and doing some of those forgotten to me songs, and many of which have never been done on Morning Watch before. So here's one, a secular song by Pete Townsend that I'm sure most of you are familiar with, called Behind Blue Eyes. Now, the reason this was in a folder of youth group songs is because I used to use it with this thing we did every year called Guitar Club. And we'd start out, kind of teaching basics of guitar to kids. And after we learned, most of the basic chords and things like that, I'd break out this song, Behind Blue Eyes, because for several reasons. One, it's The Who, kids should just know this song. But the musical composition of it really focuses on that tension and release that I was mentioning yesterday, that I would try and teach them about music. It starts in minor, but then it goes to major. It has everything in the way of right hand technique. It's got arpeggiating, right? But it's also got strumming, and then when it gets to the bridge, it's got some simple bar chords. And they're not extremely difficult. They're just basically power chords. So it's a way to tie together in one song some things that we'd probably been learning all the way. So anyway, that's why it's in there. And it's a great song. Pete Townsend said this song was written about from the point of view of a fictional villain, a villain in a story who has no choice for the actions that he does because he's written by an author, but no one knows what's going on inside of him, right? No one knows what lies behind blue eyes. Anyway, so there you go. No one knows what it's like to be the bad man. behind blue eyes. No one knows what it's like to be hated, to be faded, to telling only lies. But my dreams, they aren't as empty as my conscience seems to be. Only lonely. My love is vengeance. It's never free. No one knows what it's like to feel these feelings like I do, and I blame you. Back as high on their anger. None of my pain and woe can show through. But my dreams, they aren't as empty as my conscience seems to be. Love is vengeance. It's never free. My fist clenches, crack it open before I use it and lose my cool. When I smile, tell me some bad news before I laugh and act like a fool. And if I swallow anything evil, put your finger down my throat. If I shiver, please give me a blanket. Keep me warm, let me wear your coat. No one knows what it's like to be the bad man, to be the sad man behind blue eyes. Yep, there you go. Off of probably my favorite album of all time. Who's Next? Right? All right, so I just have to say one thing about the tension thing. This is some of the greatest writing. Not only the lyrics, which of course, once you understand that it's written from the point of view of a fictional villain, you're like, oh yeah, lyrics make all sorts of sense. But then when it gets to that bridge, it's basically just, I know, Robin, bar chords, but it's really, yeah. Who? What? Third base, Steve. It's really not that hard. It's an E. And then a B minor, but all you really need is the power chord, the bottom of it. You don't have to sound everything, right? So it's like, so you can play that with just a couple of, one finger or two fingers pressing down a couple of strings, right? play the whole, Townsend could have written the whole bridge just like that, right? And that'd be great. It's a great riff, you know. Plenty of bridges are written around just one little chord progression like that, played through the whole time. But he doesn't. He sets that up, right? When my fist clenches, crack it open, right? But then when he says, before I use it and lose my cool, instead of resolving, the E is the big resolve, right? Instead of resolving to that, he goes, before I use it and lose my cool. And he ends on a D, which is not home base, right? So you're pulling away. And then he does it again. When I smile, tell me some bad news. That ends in a D. Before I laugh and act like a fool. And then it comes home on the fourth line, it comes home to the E. That's just great writing. Because you could do the whole thing, you could sing the same melody over the sound, it would sound fine. But because the music pulls you away and ends on that D twice before finally returning to the E, it makes the land, so much stronger musically. Anyway, I used to try and teach stuff like that to the kids because it's just, if you ever get into writing, it's a good thing. My fist just crack it open before I use it and lose my cool. When I smile, tell me some bad news before I laugh and act like a fool. Right? Genius. Man is a genius. All right. Sorry. Geeking out. All right. Turning to our book, Spiritual Classics. Don't worry. I was planning to spend 2 days on this guy anyway. Paul Tournier. Tournier? Tournier. Paul Tournier. He's from Geneva, Switzerland. So that doesn't help me a whole lot on the pronunciation. He lived from 1898 to 1986. So again, this is a fairly modern 20th century person. This is, again, continuing in this discipline of solitude and silence that we've been talking about for the last several authors. Paul Tournier was a deeply religious Christian doctor and counselor who lived and worked in Geneva, Switzerland. He helped many believers by putting the insight of psychology and psychiatry into Christian perspective. At one point in his career, Tournier told his wife that he wanted to leave the practice of medicine and to become an evangelist. But he was opposed to it. Listening and openness to compromise provided him with the answer that benefited so many. He would combine his spiritual insight with his knowledge of psychoanalysis. And his many books, among them The Adventure of Living and The Meaning of Persons, integrated the psychological and the spiritual, and they were widely popular. The following selection is from a 1984 interview, so 2 years before he died. Notice Tournier's practical approach to silent meditation. He likes to meditate with a pencil in his hand because it keeps him from wool gathering. He mentions his own clumsiness about the use of silence, instead of pretending that he is the world's greatest authority. And he says that silence is not an end in itself, but a means, a way of coming closer to God. Listen to Tournier as he speaks from the treasure trove of 50 years of spiritual discipline. And this is a longer interview, but rather than just skip around and give you some excerpts, I want to read the whole thing. We'll read part of it today and then part tomorrow. So first is the power of listening and the power of silence. Remember his background, right? Psychology, psychiatry. The question is, doctors are among the busiest people in our day. It is significant, therefore, that it is a doctor who emphasizes for us the importance of silence and of meditation. You've practiced meditation constantly for the last 50 years. Why? His answer: modern people lack silence. They no longer lead their own lives. They are dragged along by events. It is a race against the clock. I think that what so many people come to see, I think that what so many people come to see me for is to find a quiet, peaceful person who knows how to listen and who isn't thinking all the time about what he has to do next. If your life is chock full already, then there won't be room for anything else. Even God can't get anything else in. So it becomes essential to cut something out. I'm putting it as simply as I can. Can one define silence? It is extremely difficult. For me, above all, it is waiting. I wait for God to stimulate my thoughts sufficiently to renew me, to make me creative, instead of being what St. Paul calls a tinkling cymbal. It's the cornerstone of my life. It is an attempt at seeing people and their problems from God's point of view, insofar that that is possible. A lot of application here for Stephen ministers, for anyone in any type of compassionate or pastoral field. Doctors, therapists. Heck, how about just friends, right? How can you be a friend? How can you really listen to someone if your own thoughts are cluttered? The interviewer asks, what was your first experience of meditation? He says, trying to listen to God for a whole hour and hearing nothing at all. Well, others would have been put off, but you weren't? It put on my mettle. Was I not capable of doing something so simple? What had interested me was the idea of listening in to God, and that goes beyond silence. Silence is no longer an end, but a means. The most precious thing of all is the possibility of being. Through the words in my mind or through my inborn unconscious faculties, the recipient of thoughts that come from God. The interviewer asks, after that first failure or that first challenge, did you persevere? And he says, often after that, my meditation seemed pretty unproductive. There comes into one's mind the thought of some step to take or perhaps a letter to write. We have to realize that we always resist doing quite simple things that we know we ought to do. If we can manage to understand the reason for this resistance, then we are on our way to self-discovery. And that's what makes meditation precious. The interviewer says there's a resemblance here to psychoanalysts. Who was it who established the value of silence? And he answers Freud. He says Freud revealed its enormous power. Under psychoanalysts, there is a moment when the subject feels silence weighing on them terribly. They long for the doctor to say something to them. Silence has the power to force you to dig deep into yourself. It was a phenomenon well known to Jesus, who would go off to spend a whole night in the desert. And St. Paul was aware of it, and all the mystics as well. It involves a restructuring of the person, which leads to the discovery of underlying motives. And the next question is very interesting. It says, can silence be an important element in the life of a non-believer? He answers, of course. Silence has a psychological aspect. For me, it means listening to God. But for others, it may represent a way of deepening self-knowledge. I have often had occasion to share silence with others. I can say in general that it is the less sophisticated person who understands best. A rustic who decides to listen in to God can in 5 minutes make you a list of all his problems, while a professor of philosophy would be incapable of doing that. Children, of course, understand straight away, too. The naked truth comes out. We're dealing with simple matters, and modern people have lost their understanding of such things. The interviewer asks, so intellectualism can, in a way, be a hindrance? And he says, yes, indeed. In medical practice, too, it is the intellectual who is the most difficult to treat. I love that. The intellectual who is the most difficult to treat. Not for nothing did Jesus say that we must become like little children. On the other hand, an intellectual who undergoes a profound spiritual experience has much that he or she can offer. And I'll stop right there on that word. And we'll pick up again with Paul Tournier tomorrow. And maybe I'll look it up and make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. All right, folks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to these profound words of silence. May you find that peace that so often eludes us in this world. May you find peace and purpose in this day. Thanks for being here, and I'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for another morning watch. Thanks. Thanks, Emma. All right, y'all take care, and I'll talk to you soon.